So now that we've seen a lot of database operations, from entering in data to forms to working with queries, what are our options for communicating between one database and another? We have import and export options. So just to be thorough, because I feel like we have to be, remember, importing is the action whereby you get data from an external source, and exporting is the action whereby you turn internal data into a format that is digestible by other external sources. So really the reason I wanted to make such a distinction there is when you are working with importing and exporting data, it's really important to understand that, number one, and this really is number one here for an access class, is that access formats are not universal. And that is a universal statement. There is probably no more true a statement here in this entire course than access formats are not universal. The distinct challenge when working with an access database is that you are working with a proprietary piece of software. That ACCB file is not something that you can simply export and have, LibreOffice or TextEdit or Notepad or other database programs even open. So the challenge to you is, as part of the team responsible for the data, for importing and exporting the data, is to realize that we need a secondary format here. We need to be able to turn access data into data that's accessible by another program. So there's a couple of ways listed here and I believe it's eight, to be able to do that, and there is an order of preference. Here in 8, I think it's 8.3, it is 8.8 or dash 8. There's an export as PDF, and that is frankly not preferable. The issue with working with PDFs is you are going from one proprietary format to another. And that means that on whosever job it is to import that data, they're going to need to run that data through another filter. They're going to have to do an extra layer of work to be able to get your data and bring it into their database. Far and away, the two most common sources of export data you're going to see, or the two most common formats for imported data that you are going to use, are going to be, in order of least to first, Excel and CSV. So let's just go over those in the order in which they appear. So not necessarily the preference, but it's okay to use an Excel spreadsheet. The value in using an Excel spreadsheet is as follows. The way business gets done is in Excel, right? So right now, because invariably out of 20 of you, 2 of you are watching this with one eye while you're at the office, and you're watching the door with the other eye to make sure that nobody catches you doing homework at the office. I'm okay with that. I think double dipping is fine. But for those 2 of you who, by unit volume, it's probably true, are doing this at work, probably you have Excel open, right? You probably have an Excel spreadsheet open that you're already getting data off of. So the thought behind that is, look, Excel is so universal. It is so widely and so densely used in business that there's no real issue in exporting your data as an XLS or XLSX if we're using much more up-to-date standards. More on that in a moment. And there's little penalty for the importer. So the other entity that's receiving your data, that's pulling it in to their data system, there's little penalty there because they already have the Excel program as an intermediary. And sometimes it's even convenient because you can just grab records out of that Excel spreadsheet, or out from that exported Excel spreadsheet, and bring it into some other Excel spreadsheet that you've already got running for your organization. And that tends to be okay. Now, I don't know where everybody's organization is on their, I'll be gentle here and I'll call it upgrade timeline. What I'll tell you is we work with businesses here at Rock Valley. I work with businesses, still that come to us and look for student slave labor, and as consultancy and etc. And what I can tell you is not everybody is using Word, Excel, Access, PowerPoint 2010 and newer. And I know we are on the precipice here of 2021. We are literally within 48 hours of 2021 here. And you want me to believe, or I want you to believe, that people are still using 10 plus year old office software. Yeah, that's a fact. People are still out there using 10 plus year old office software. So part of the issue that you may or may not encounter, but I wanted to drop it in here so that you're aware. Part of the issue that you may encounter is if you export your data as an XLS, you are going to, not enjoy some of the, the newer data formatting, the newer actions you can undertake as part of new Excel, right? And the challenge on the reverse side of that is if you export everything as an XLSX, you are going to risk the other business having to run that 2010 and newer Excel format through a filter and lose potentially some functionality there. So it's not a huge issue. I'll tell you honestly, it probably only happens, generously 4 out of every 100 times or something. You're going to run into that issue, but you're going to run into that issue. Even more preferable than the Excel format is going to be the comma separated value file, and that is CSV. Anything can open a CSV file, literally anything. If you are on a Mac, TextEdit can do it. If you are on a PC, Notepad can do it. If you are on a PC, you can actually read a CSV file right in the command line. If you are running command line Unix for whatever reason, you've got a tremendous beard and a social ineptitude, and you are running command line Unix for whatever freaking reason, you can open and run with the data in that CSV file. If we go from one database software to another, so we go from Access to MySQL, we go from MySQL to Microsoft SQL, we go to Open SQL, we go to a Viper type database, all over the place. It doesn't matter. CSV files are going to be usable there. So really, it should be your preference to use the CSV file. So just by way of why is it helpful to use a CSV file, the following is how that file is accessed. So it's essentially one big long line of data. And you would see in that big long line of data just fields. You would see pieces of records in there, right? So you'd see a last name, you would see a first name, you would see a zip code, you would see so on and so forth. And in between each of those values, you would see a comma. And what the system that you are importing that data into does says, look, what I am looking for here is commas. And what that lets me know is everything that preceded that comma belongs to this field. And then it continues to look for another comma, and it says found one. Now, everything that preceded that comma but was after the previous one goes in this field, and it keeps populating your data, so on and so forth and so forth. And the benefit to a CSV file over a PDF, over an Excel spreadsheet, is you can train software to look for that special character, and you can train any software to look for that special character. So if I build a database and I need to export it for an iOS application, I can do that. If I need to build it for a big software as a service application someplace, I can do that. It really doesn't matter what the destination is. So my suggestion to you is, unless you have a compelling reason to do it in a different format, your default setting really should be the CSV file. And that's because of the universality of it. You can take it and really use that data any place, which is, frankly, it's the dream, right? That's what we have all of this computer science stuff for, is universality, that it can go any place. So that was incredibly long explanation for importing and exporting file destinations for Access and really any other application or database.